Now, this video sparked from the recent rumors of that the MCU is looking at both male and female actors, possibly for the role of Thing in the Fantastic Four. And while there's certainly a lot of backlash against this, I thought we'd talk about the actual female Things from the comics. Yes, plural. As there's actually been more than one, but in fact, two. Also, this video is not intended to attack or defend or anything but the choice to gender bend the character for the MCU, if they go that route. Instead, this video is intended to mainly be on the female Things, which came to mind after hearing about this rumor. I want to make that very clear, as I'm not trying to be controversial about talking about them. I will likely give my personal opinion on gender bending the character of Thing later on in the video, likely at the end, but that is not the sole focus of this video. So, let's begin. The first female Thing was She-Thing, aka Sharon Ventura. Now, she comes from a time where Thing had his own very comic book series, which is actually a pretty solid series in my opinion. She started off as just a normal woman, who is the mirrored version of Thing's ex-girlfriend from Battleworld, which was the planet that he had stayed at after Secret Wars. This was in 1985. She ended up getting her own abilities, of which is super strength, and gets her own suit going by the name Ms. Marvel, for really no real reason. You see, she's only given that name because someone mistakes her for the real Ms. Marvel. And she just takes it. Okay, I mean, Carol wasn't using the name at the moment, so I suppose that makes sense. But I'm not entirely sure how one could confuse these two women because they look nothing alike. Afterwards, there'd be a bit of an accident that would result in her becoming She-Thing. It would end up growing mistrust towards all men, going down a darker path. She'd end up becoming an ally of Dr. Doom of all people, who offered her a cure. She'd end up being turned back into an ally when she was turned back to her old self and kind of saw the error in her ways. She would attempt to redeem herself by fighting Doom alongside the heroes. But while she did help, she would only end up transforming back into her Thing form. And after that, she was just kind of gone from comics, this being in the 90s. Yeah, Bye Sharon. She would return in minor cameos here and there, typically in the background. One of which we saw her back in her hero human form, implying that she was cured somehow. However, it likely would just have happened off panel, I suppose, unless this is a continuity error, which also is highly plausible because we see her in her She-Thing form after this. And more cameos, of course, so perhaps there was just another She-Thing. I mean, we know there is another one, but it can't be her for what we're about to talk about because she isn't exactly a Thing, technically. And that is a great segue to our next female Thing, that being Ms. Thing. Ms. Thing is Darla Deering, a darling socialite first appearing in Marvel Now issue 1 from 2012. So she's a newer character compared to She-Thing. She would be a romantic interest to Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. But when the Fantastic Four left Earth, Darla borrowed an old suit that Grimm once wore, when he had temporarily lost his powers. She would be joined by She-Hulk, Medusa, and Ant-Man to form a substitute Fantastic Four as the main team was off Earth. And while she was there during this arc, she wasn't really a character. She would end up returning in Scott Lang's own series as a guest star returning, where she was also portrayed as a villain, only to help the hero in the end, this time to help Scott save his daughter, Cassie. However, unlike Sharon, she didn't exactly have a bad ending, I suppose. Her ending was more just, she's still around, I guess, and is, for some unknown reason, still Ms. Thing as unknown. That's a little confusing, because technically she only became Ms. Thing in order to be a part of the substitute Fantastic Four. It was implied that she wasn't going to be hero after that. Also, the reason why she cannot be the She-Thing that would later appear in comics is because of a very obvious thing, that being the fact she doesn't have a headpiece. Personally, between the two, I think She-Thing is a much more interesting character than Ms. Thing, because there's a tragic element to She-Thing's character, and I like the idea of the character possibly becoming a villain. Well, Ms. Thing, well, she was fun for the arc, which is an arc I personally really like. It's not necessary to introduce his character. In fact, they could have swapped her out for She-Thing, and the story practically would have stayed the same. She-Hulk, Medusa, and Ant-Man definitely add a lot more to that arc than Ms. Thing did. Now, like I promised, I am going to talk about the whole controversial idea of casting a female actress to play the Thing. Now, my opinion on it is that, while I don't have a problem of gender bending some characters and certain characters, I don't think that this is a character that should be gender bent. However, with that said, She-Thing is still a character and very much could appear in the sequel of the Fantastic Four movie if they want to do a female Thing. Or even set up the groundwork for having her in the first movie as Sharon, and then have her be She-Thing in the next movie, and just have Thing be a separate character. Or they could do Ms. Thing, even though I personally think that She-Thing would be much more interesting than Ms. Thing. Or kind of do like this whole thing that MCU likes to do and just combine the characters, like borrow bits and pieces from each character to build on at least some sort of character with a name of, I don't know, Sharon Ventura or Darla Deering, or Darla Ventura or Sharon Deering. You could just combine both of them and just get the best of each. It is an interesting idea when you think about it, because you could incorporate the whole thing with Johnny Storm with the whole relationship, because I think that is the strongest part of Ms. Thing's character, and play it on with the whole villain side of She-Thing and her whole thing with the Thing, because that was the best part of her character. Well, I think the weakest part of her character was the Ms. Marvel part. Because while I know some people really liked it, personally, was not a big fan of Sharon as Ms. Marvel. I thought the moment she became She-Thing, she became a much more interesting character. But that's my opinion. And that's it. Like always, please like, subscribe, and see you guys next time. Bye.